Good morning, everybody. And thank you so much, Anne. It's fantastic to support this series of talks, and well done to Anne and the whole team for really putting on a program of content that kind of covers some of the big issues that are affecting the fashion industry at the moment. It's really great to see and be part of. Now, I'm delighted to be hosting this session today on how we can use AI responsibly. Very interesting topic, something we're writing a lot about at the moment. We're exploring the different use cases for AI in fashion. I think the industry has been, in some ways, relatively quick to embrace some of the potential of, say, generative AI, but also there's a lot of fear, a lot of concern about what that means, what it means in terms of the environmental impact, but also in terms of your IP rights and, is it okay to use some of these tools to design? What does that look like? What does that mean in terms of our creativity going forwards? So we're going to explore some of those issues on our panel today. I am delighted to invite all of the panelists up onto stage. I'm going to do it one by one. Michel Tjoeng. Thank you, Michel. You're going to come up and join me, co-founder of ChatLabs. In no particular order. Madeleine Parker is co-founder of New Foundation. Madeleine. Niamh Peren is Chief of Innovation and Strategy at the Foreseight Institute. And Tutia Schaad is Head of Fashion Design at the Macromedia University in Berlin. Thank you for joining me. Okay, we've got a lot to get through in 35 minutes, so we're going to whiz through. Tutia, I'm going to come to you first, because what I'd love to do is set the scene a little bit in terms of how the industry is approaching AI before we get into the kind of real nitty-gritty of the use cases. And of course, you are kind of introducing this into the curriculum. I'm sure it's evolving very quickly. So tell us about how you are bringing it into the curriculum and what the response has been from your students.
Yeah, so I think here in the panel, I'm really representing the designers and the students, so future users of AI. So as a professor, we see, we feel, and we research the importance of tools, technology. With the AI, we know that it's our responsibility to integrate this tool in the curriculum. And even though there's some reluctancy from students, they don't know, they are very scared of using these tools, it's now part, actually, of almost every fashion project we have in the semester. So right now, I'm doing the Fashion Week. We even have an exhibition at Neo Fashion until today, the last day, where we are presenting a work with second semester students using AI with the company NewLife.ai, who sponsor us, and integrating it in the design process. Because for me, it is important that students learn from day one. So I chose the babies, the second semester, to really work together, that they really learn from day one to use AI positively and as enhancing the creative process, and not being passively using AI or being even like a victim of AI. So this is, and of course, if you look at reports in the fashion industry, such as the State of Fashion for McKinsey, you know that majority of companies are looking for AI skills. And when you say skills, you need people who learn the skills and know how to use the skills. So this is why it is now in our curriculum.
Madeleine, when we were chatting before, you mentioned that you'd been speaking to some people at Paris Fashion Week, and that actually you used the term AI literacy, which I thought was a really good way of putting it. But do you think that the majority of people in the industry are AI literate? Are they kind of there? What stage are we at?
Yeah, I think it's very diverse, and I'm sure there's people who are extremely literate in it, but I think on average, it's not what we've experienced, kind of bringing an AI product to market for creators to interact with, and also brands. One of the kind of AI tools we brought out, we were backed by Farfetch with, and we went through the NVIDIA program, and the conversations with brands then about 4 years ago were very surface level, kind of like research side rather than development. I definitely think think that's changed. I think tools like what you're working on are also part of that. But from the creators' perspective and new students, I definitely think it's something that's sort of been missing in the intersection of fashion and technology curriculum, and maybe also from the kind of applications we're used to using, like Instagram or different things, where we're more users rather than kind of creators of AI somehow in that user experience.
And Tutia, you mentioned a reluctance. Where is that reluctance coming from?
Yeah, I think there's two sides. That's on one side is that some students come to me and like, oh no, I'm creative enough. I don't need AI, right? So there's a little bit of a cliché maybe that is still there. And then there's the fear. The fear of either just using technology, which is amongst fashion design students, but also the fear of losing your future job because of AI. And I think that what my aim is by integrating it, by forcing them almost to use it. Yeah. In the semester project is really to show them how it can be, I'm very tech positive as well, like you, how it can actually really push them and even inspire them. So it's not about end product, it's not that AI created something and I'm the victim of it and I have to use it or I want to use it just to spare time, but really it's a bit like a ping pong work. So for example, in this project, they generate the images, and then they have to work with them analogically again. So they redo collages with AI and vice versa, and it's really part of this creative process. And I see that when they have had the first step, afterwards, they really enjoy it.
That fear dissipates.
Yes.
But of course, design is only one area where AI comes into the fashion industry, and I would like to start to explore some of the other use cases. And Michel, we were hearing before about, the customer journey and how there's it's very difficult to get a really thorough understanding of how customers are actually shopping. Like, tell me about what you're doing with ChatLabs and how are you tackling that kind of misunderstanding? How are you using AI to make sure we're getting a better understanding of that journey and improving the experience?
Sure. So yeah, we've been incubated by LVMH for over a year now. So working with all of their maisons, and we have one main objective is to make the brand experience more immersive and more relevant for the consumer. And now we talked about e-commerce experiences before, and what I've been terribly frustrated with myself for the last 20 years that I've been in the space is that the e-commerce experiences are still the same as 20 years ago, right? So we have websites with a homepage and product list page and a checkout, and that hasn't changed for the last couple of decades. And we wanted to really change that because the rest of the digital ecosystem has evolved massively, right? If you take what is MySpace versus TikTok over the last 2 decades is very different. So the big shift that we've seen on the consumer side is that the shopping experience is actually not happening on the brand sites anymore. Like years ago, people would go to a website to consume the brand content and make their product choices, etc. Nowadays, about 64% of the consumers make their purchase decisions actually on social media. So the conversion of the consumer is not actually happening on the brand websites anymore. And the reason for that is because these experiences on social, they are a lot more easy to use by the consumer, and they're more relevant. They're hyper-personalized. Actually, everybody in this room already has a lot of experience with hyper-personalization. So who here uses TikTok, for example? Who here bought something because of stuff they saw on TikTok? Any hashtag TikTok made me buy it here? Yeah, exactly. So what this approach is now is an algorithmic approach to the discovery mechanism for the consumer. So what it does is we monitor all of the behavior for the consumers, like what are they interested in, what are they not interested in, what are you swiping past, and then you get a feed of content which is completely tailored to you as an individual, right? So everybody here has a different feed on social, but if all of you with your different values and your different interests go to a website, all of you are getting the exact same experience, right? which is crazy. So we're helping the brands essentially discover what are the interests of their consumers, what are their values, how do they want to express themselves down to the individual person, and then tailor the brand experience with their content and the values that the brand brings to marry those two things up together and make it completely contextual and personalized for those individuals. So more of a living website than a static one.
And it's so interesting, isn't it? Because a big challenge that the industry is facing now with e-commerce is that there's so much product online and discovery is so difficult. So I see that that's like such an interesting way where AI can be brought in to help people to really cut through all of that noise. I guess on the flip side, though, what you don't want is this sort of feedback loop where the algorithm's just showing you the same things over and over again. So it's finding that sweet spot in between. What are the other kind of use cases for AI within fashion? Does anyone else want to jump in? Because obviously there is, it kind of ranges across the supply chain. We could talk about maybe how it kind of increases efficiency. Niamh or Madeleine, anything you want to add?
You go.
I don't know why I'm looking at you. I've just volunteered you.
Well, I think we first have to start by saying AI is intelligent, right? So that means that it doesn't necessarily plateau. So what we know today, which is I guess where the fear comes in, is that it's going to keep building and keep growing and keep getting smarter and smarter, and it can self-train. So that's like a big part of it. This has the ability to, I think, affect a lot of supply chains, like you say. So we do have designing and consumer, but let's also talk about data privacy. Let's talk about deep fakes. Let's talk about like pro-social multipolar AI. Let's talk about decentralization. What does that mean? Because that's going to affect the future, and that's what we're trying to build. We are currently the builders, but we might not be the builders for all that long. So yeah, I work at Foreseight Institute. We're a non-profit in San Francisco. We've existed for like 39 years, which is a long time in the science and tech space. I'm a co-director of our AI safety grant, and so we're like granting projects that are in neurotech, so like whole brain emulation, pro-social multipolar AI, cryptography, security, and we essentially bring together a lot of the academics, the entrepreneurs, the investors together to like build out these big ideas so that later on down the chain it maybe becomes part of your lives. And actually Foreseight has a bit of a track record of that, so that's kind of good. I guess we try and steer it, so we really want to create flourishing futures, which I guess is when we start talking about responsibility. So there is a huge conversation happening at the moment about what conscious AI might be like, and how to build suffering into AI in its realm, and that's because humanity suffers, right? And we learn a lot through feeling pain, sadness, grief. How do we then build that in to an understanding of what this AI has and could be? Sorry if I'm rambling. Please, tell me really quickly. No. I feel like I might be going on a little spiel.
No, what you've done is very neatly brought us into talking about some of the responsibility issues, right? Where, there are so many exciting ways that the industry is playing around with this. I mean, AI has been, obviously, the fashion industry has been using AI for a long, long time. But I think it's fair to say in the past 18 months or so, this conversation has really, for us certainly at Vogue Business, it's become really at the top of the agenda. The advances we're seeing in generative AI have been phenomenal, and so that's where all the kind of exciting projects around how can we use this to improve design, how can we make the customer journey better. On the supply chain side, how can we use AI to improve efficiency, reduce waste, forecasting? Yes. If we can use it to better, more accurately forecast what people are actually going to buy and wear, then that's an incredible change that the industry really needs. But all of this comes with risk, right?
It does. But also we need to reflect a little bit, I think, on markets and we are rewarded for growth, and AI is a big part of that because it can build exponentially. so sustainability is also having a business model that works, right? So it's not about we need to be able to pay people fairly. We need to be able to make safe working conditions. The climate is a really big issue and something that we should all feel very near and dear about. And
that, some of the challenges I'd like to pull out do actually include, we talk about how technology can help to reduce the industry's impact on the environment, but also it is a very energy-intensive process, right? So there's
data waste is awful.
Well, tell us about that, because most people don't really know about this.
Does anyone else want to jump in on data waste?
Oh my gosh.
These things are still, I think, largely unspoken about.
Yeah. I'd love to jump in and respond to what you've been saying as well around this. When we had a little sync before this panel, I think one of the things that struck me was just kind of coming back into the fashion conversation around AI compared to some of the more deep tech conversations that are going on, more on the non-consumer side, let's say. And I think there's really a big difference between what I've heard from brands talking about AI, realizing how big that shift is really going to be, and what are some of the use cases that we aren't really imagining yet. And we discussed a little bit about things like even having agents and brands then talking to me having multiple AI agents, for example, and things like that, and how that could even accelerate the demand, and it can accelerate so many things. And just a note is, I think when it comes to responsibility, it's also imagining what is the message we want to put out there, especially for younger people coming into the industry, consuming these things and contributing to what the future of fashion industry is really going to be. And I think a lot of that is down to how to help people really nurture their creativity without necessarily producing things that aren't highly innovative. And I think that that's definitely a difficult business model for fast fashion, but I think that this AI opportunity can really come in there and help to really identify trends at the beginning of the inception of those trends, reward those creators, reward those students who are contributing to that. Because where fashion is playing a role in AI right now, for example, is scraping trends data from these bigger platforms, not rewarding creators, having a totally fragmented data supply chain, not putting that intelligence in. And I think what fast fashion has had the incentive to do is to be able to reap the rewards of knowing quickly trends. But what maybe the next big opportunity could be is reaping the rewards whilst literally giving back to the creators and the new generation who are coming up with those trends, and finding ways to inject that data into the supply chain more quickly so that more people can get paid and have different, essentially, business models coming out of it.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. We talk a lot with all of the different execs of the big groups, and they all are super excited about AI. They think it's going to transform their entire business and every single line, because we're moving away from. So the first generation of software and technology is we build tools that are operated by a human who can then do their job better, right? This is our current state of technology. With AI, we're going to move to a model where we're actually outsourcing the decision and the process as these things have more and more agency. But what they are worried about is first thing that they're most concerned about is copyright infringement. Yes, we can use these tools to rapidly design products, and we can use them to create content for our brand, etc. But what are these models trained on? What data? And is that copyright infringement or not? For example, if we use a model that is trained on all of the fashion that Louis Vuitton has ever brought out, right? And then you could go in the style of Louis Vuitton, design me this dress, right? Like the artists and the creators behind all of those products would say that it is infringement, right? So, and the legal battles on this are just beginning, and it hasn't been flushed out. I think we need to move definitely to a world where everybody that's contributing to the data that is training these models needs to be somehow rewarded, and it shouldn't be just a few big companies in the world that are reaping the benefits of all of the inputs that is being used to train these models. So that's why a lot of brands are hesitant to use the Gen AI elements. And the other bit is, the consistency on its predictions, right? If you're outsourcing a decision to an AI, we say like, all right, tell me how many SKUs I need to produce for this product. Based on this data set, it's like, how accurate is it? Mm-hmm. Is it gonna get it wrong? And if so, by how much, right? So the accuracy is also a big worry at this stage, but I think that's gonna improve a lot over the next few years for sure.
I'd love to pick up on the kind of the first part of that with I mean, we're even seeing this debate happening at the moment, because I don't know if anyone's seen, but there's the conversation happening around Bagu. There's a bag brand that collaborated with Kalina Strada, and Kalina Strada uses, and they have been very open about the fact that they are experimenting with generative AI. So they use generative AI to produce a couple of the prints, I believe, and the consumer response has been quite, people have been like, oh, well, we don't want something that's being produced by AI. The interesting thing is that they use their own print archive. They haven't borrowed from anyone else's IP or anything, of course, but there's still that that reaction has been one of, oh, well, hold on, this feels like it's not, like you've tried to pull the wool over our eyes, when in fact they have been very open as a brand about experimenting with that. So I think there's still that question about transparency, right? And interested to know Tutia, what do you talk to your students about when you're doing design projects? Like how do you teach them how to be
authenticity behind the design, right? It's definitely an interesting question. I don't know what you think.
Maybe brands have to emphasize on the story, and not just presenting here AI collection. That could be trendy in the beginning, but I think you really have to show the authenticity and the origin of a project in order to explain to the customer that the product that comes out here is original and authentic. I think that could be one way.
And I guess the storytelling is really showing the process and explaining the thinking behind it, right? Why are you using AI?
Yeah.
Because I think from the brands that we've been sort of speaking to who are experimenting with it, they're like, well, it's another creativity tool, right? It's just a way to put things in, see what comes out, go, okay, we like that, we don't like that, maybe we'll tweak this a bit. So it's sort of using it as a tool rather than as, giving over all the power to the technology.
Yes. And also the students, they have to document all the prompts that they are giving into the AI. And it's not only in fashion design. In our university, we also have business and other disciplines, but also in fashion design, students have to write text. So we are already familiar with, our students are familiar with using AI because they are allowed to, but there's a regulations how to use it. So they really have to credit, they have to document all prompts, so that, of course, it's very difficult to, verify everything, right? But it's still like an ethic that we are already bringing from the beginning to them.
I find this super interesting as someone working in the media industry, because also very relevant, of course,
yes.
how we generate content and create content using these tools. There's a lot of ethical considerations there. Niamh, is there anything you can kind of share in terms of like what is happening around some of these conversations? Is there, where are we at? Is regulation coming in? What are we going to see happening? I imagine the governments everywhere are going, actually, we probably need to do something.
Well, regulation is a part of it. It's not the one and only answer. Regulation is great, I guess, in some ways. But, it's a slow process, and can it keep up with an ever-changing format and landscape? Probably not. Also, if you look at policy making, it's kind of obsolete as a structure when you're trying to apply it to these technologies, and those that are creating these decisions aren't always the most informed, although they're trying to be. But yeah, so I think that a lot of the responsibility in the building comes back on us as we're creating, and what are the frameworks and what are the limitations that we're trying to build into this technology is super important. We have the ability to kind of steer it, or at least like we should have a little bit of hope and be putting a lot of energy into that. Because if we don't, then yeah, we're just letting it
take over. Madeleine, what about you? What kind of, concerns do you encounter? What's your take on this?
I think I echo the point about regulation not being able to keep up. I'm very pro good regulation. I wish Europe would be a bit more innovative before it regulates, but we'll get there. And I think one of the really big leaps forward is to do with decentralization of AI. And that's definitely a topic where the fashion industry, from my perspective, sits pretty far out of the current discussions of what's happening around decentralized AI.
Can you explain what you mean by decentralization?
Yeah.
Very cool.
It can happen at many different layers of the AI stack. So, for example, you need compute power, you need GPUs for the energy to be able to run your AI. And that can either be done by huge centralized companies that have major VC money producing these resources for people to buy, or it can be done even at the level of my computer. So I could have edge computing where I have some spare energy and resources to be able to contribute to a network to provide this energy and resource capacity to even be able to run the AI. And so we can go from that perspective, or we can go increasingly from decentralizing the resource contribution. And in the world of blockchain and AI, it's usually called decentralized AI or AI x crypto, AI Web3. Those are some of the terms that are being used to describe that cluster of companies. And so you can have it at the level of the compute, and then at every single level going up. So it can be, for example, at the inference level, or having to decide the data standards in order to be able to talk between different data sets that you have, or it could even be at the level of the weights. So in a model, you might decide what things have more value, and therefore you need to put a different weight behind those things. And that's what we've essentially got in most of our Web 2 experiences, like the current TikToks or Instagram or anybody really. The way the web currently works is we generally experience it. Is those weights are essentially being run by a centralized company. And this is something that Elon Musk also said when he bought Twitter. It's that he basically bought a CSV file, so it's a spreadsheet full of numbers and weights of who likes what's relevant in what context, who verifies that that's relevant. And that, I think, is the most interesting layer, because it comes to the topic of responsibility and discernment. And so what are we saying that has relevance in which context? Who has the authority to say that? And how would we even decide that in this panel? How would we come up with a governance mechanism to understand who's saying the most relevant thing in this panel in what context?
What are the motivations?
Exactly. What are the incentives? Is
Yeah.
there collusion happening? Does someone have a bad incentive, etc.? And so creating internet protocol standards to allow that to happen in a non-centralized way is one of the big things that's being worked on, and that's something that our foundation, New Foundation, is working on at the level of an open source protocol, same as kind of TCP/IP or HTTP. And that's at the AI data level. It's got nothing to do with crypto. And then there's also the crypto level.
Okay, I'm going to need a thesaurus, I think, to unpick some of that. But I mean, what the thing that I was thinking as we were talking there is biases, right? Biases are such a big part of
Yes.
When we're talking about how we're using AI, bringing it back to fashion. And that's something there have been interesting things we've looked into, like if you use AI to recruit, to help the recruitment process, obviously not specific to fashion, this is across any industry, the AI can be trained on something that has an inherent bias. So how do you make sure that what it's being trained on doesn't have biases? And that, all of this blows my mind a little bit, but is that a big topic of conversation that's happening at the moment around AI? Is where is our understanding at the moment of how you can start to break down those biases, or how you put safety mechanisms in place to make sure we're not bringing biases in, so you're not all being recommended products based on assumptions about who you are as a person that could be fundamentally very wrong.
Yeah, I think I'm going to try and explain it simply, without any acronym. So, like, essentially, the AI models are just predictions based on the training data. So the problem with bias is if you have a large swath of data and then you train the model on it, and it then does a prediction like, all right, what does the president of the US look like, right? Mm-hmm. It's inherently biased because of the training set of data, because it looks like all the data that it's consumed, and it just like does a probabilistic calculation. It's probably going to be an old white man, gray hair, because statistically that's what I've seen the most in terms of the data, right? And that basically kills diversity, because if you're doing everything probabilistic, then you never explore all the alternative options that are out there. So what we're trying to do with our model ourselves is to exclude anything that around the individuals that has like demographic notion. Like, I don't care what age people are, how high they are, what color their hair is, where they live, all of these things, like appearance and all of that stuff goes out the window, out of the training set completely, so that we only look at intent and behavior rather than demographic information, so that our model can never be biased towards demographic attributes. This is a thing we are doing, but I think I don't know if you guys agree, but it comes down to what is the data that's being put in, and how, because unfortunately the data already is biased, right? The internet is biased because there's more data about certain things than there are other things, and therefore they train the entire model on it, and that's basically self-fulfilling prophecy. And then there's the tuning around the weights, but that's super complicated because these models are getting insanely big, and even the researchers themselves, they don't know which weights to tune if they want to remove the bias that they've entered in the first place. So I think the answer is more on the training data side than it is on the adjusting the weights in the model, because they don't even fully understand themselves how the models work and where the different things sit. I don't know what you think. Maybe.
You start to get a real sense of when we talk about responsibility here, right?
Yes.
Because actually, if you think about some of this is inherent bias, and so you might not, as a developer, you may not know about it. If you're someone in fashion who's using some of these tools, you may not be aware. But then also you mentioned deepfakes before, right? So like also there are some nefarious goings on where people are manipulating some of these technologies in order to, to achieve what they want to. So I suppose what I'm looking for is like a message to people watching who are in the industry, should they kind of go, okay, actually, I now understand why everyone's a bit scared of this, maybe I should back off? Or what's the advice? How do you do this safely?
I don't think it's one or the other a little bit in many ways, because then we're just acting like a piece of code, right, which is black or white or yes or no. We have the ability to have some scale in that and steer ourselves. What would you say?
Yeah.
I hope, probably no one in this panel is going to say, yeah, definitely just don't experiment with AI at all and you'll be fine. Like, it's here already, right? This is the point. It's here already. So is it for people in the industry to just kind of educate themselves? Are we looking at regulation coming in? How do we use all of this technology in a responsible way and even ideally push forward, a more sustainable fashion industry, more positive fashion industry? That's where I'm kind of trying to get to.
I think I've got kind of two ways of looking at that. One is just we need to bridge the gap between the conversations happening between fashion, AI, and AI. And I think that might require some kind of research groups or events or something like that, or even research reports, etc., that could be produced and to really facilitate that more. But also just like looking at fashion as a mechanism and what it has done for the sustainability movement. You can go around and show people statistics on what's happening to the planet, but a lot of people can't relate to that. And when you create a way of living and something that has coolness or status or something that's very human and social. The fashion industry has actually played a massive role in that, maybe sometimes at a greenwashing level, like people having vegan Starbucks or God knows what, but it's had like really a big influence on bringing the conversation around the environment to the mainstream. And I imagine that is going to happen again with AI. And I think fashion as a whole will play a big part in making these topics around AI relatable and cool and doing the right thing being the cool thing. So I'm excited to see how brands play with that.
I have a fun thing on that. So AI recently has been used with whale calls. Do you know about this? It's pretty beautiful, right? And so we now know that if we make a certain sound, a whale is going to give a call back, and it's going to be that call. Now, we don't know necessarily what that call means, but I think this means we're a lot closer than we've ever been to understanding whale calls. So it's not too long in the it's like a super close future where at some point the whales are going to be able to turn around to us and be like, hey, can you please stop doing X, Y, and Z? Like, hey, let's do this. Like, we really appreciate it if you stop doing like the sonar. It's really deafening. I can't sleep at night. Or, you know, like there's going to be a direction that's going to start coming in where we're going to have a whole, like a better understanding of our planet and also our direction and like where we can take things. So, like, it's not, there is like a pretty beautiful dream in that. And yeah, the whales might tell us what to do, you know?
And that's kind of where I would like to end the discussion on is kind of just, you know, coming back to, because obviously we spent a bit of time talking about risks and challenges and some scary stuff, some of which I don't understand. So I would like to bring back to, you know, a kind of positive, like looking forward at the use of AI in the industry, what, you know, the amazing possibilities, right? Like what could the future look like if we use these tools responsibly? Does anyone want to pitch in on their kind of vision for fashion, maybe Tutia?
Yeah, I think I could maybe speak for students of future brands. I think, of course, this panel is very important because AI also uses energy, water to be used, and we have to be conscious about prompting. Do we have to ask the time, or can we find out otherwise? But at the same time, I had a fashion brand for 10 years, and I know and I remember the months, the hours we spent there to find out about fit, to make hundreds and hundreds of samples that we still have in our storage that is unsellable because it's way too small or way too big, or, you know, just not fitting. And I think on one hand there's really this resource economizing, not just in terms of money or time, but also material. That is, I think, that we have to educate ourselves with, that we are conscious that we can really use that. And on the other hand, the creativity part, I think creativity will never die. It has always existed since the beginning of our existence on Earth, and it has survived wars and everything. And you know, in the beginning of AI, there was a human being, and at the end, there's still a human being editing and choosing and continuing the process. So I think that's a part that should also be more communicated for the younger generation, so that they are not, again, fearing and not just addressing the topic at all, but really actively owning it. And and then on the other hand, also, you know, for smaller brands or for students, we have fashion industry. The fashion is emotional, and it's a dream world. Yeah, we don't buy, like you said before, clothes just because we are cold, but we are creating emotion and dreams. And you know, sometimes you, for a smaller brand, you would like to make a photo shooting in Vietnam. For me, for example, in the jungle, and it's not possible. And you are frustrated. And with the AI, I think it's really like a possibility there where you can still, not lazily, but there's a lot of work until achieving the right result, show the world that you really want to, you know, that is in your head or in your heart, to the public. So I think that's
I think that's actually a lovely note to end it on. So we're going to leave you with the idea of both what it can do in terms of creativity, also with whale song. And thank you so much to my amazing panel for what was a very informative discussion that we managed to cram into a short period of time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.